Hi everybody, welcome to the January 2018 Houston Clutter Coaching Meetup Group. My name's Gayle Goddard and I'm the Clutter Fairy. Say hi everybody.
Hi.
We are here in Houston doing our usual meetup about organizing, and today's topic is head over heart practical alternatives to staying stuck into your clutter. I want to say thanks everybody for writing in to our call for topics in 2018. We had a great response on the YouTube channel. People making suggestions on Facebook about things that we should talk about in the new year. So happy new year, and we appreciate the help. And we're going to either pull the topics for the meetup group, or we're going to pull some of them into the book that we're working on for in future. So thank you so much, and we'll do our best to give everybody credit. We appreciate your support. What else did I want to say? Oh, I want to remind everybody to, as you're listening to us talk, turn up this volume of the video, but also turn up the volume of your computer. I think some people go to do the volume that's just on the specific video and don't realize that their computer volume isn't all the way up either. So I think it'll help some of the sound problems if you have everything turned up high. So you'll probably hear the audience better, at least that way, right? Okay. So
shout outs to the people who suggested the idea.
Yes. So tonight's topic was suggested in part by Rowan Orr, and she's in California, and Peprina Malt in Australia. And basically we thought their two requests were sort of two aspects of the same topic, and so we thought we would merge them together. We could talk about them together. So I hope that we do justice to them tonight. Ladies, thank you so much for sending us the topics. Okay, so we've talked about how hard people find it to let go of the emotional attachment to the stuff. When you try to let go of it, it feels really important to you still. Things that you have loved, things that you have used, worn specifically. The examples I wrote down, when a client's telling me that they're talking about the picture on the wall and they're telling the whole story about how it came about, or they're telling me about how long they wore that particular dress, or they're talking about the pan that their mother used for 25 years. What they're really doing is they're giving me a lesson in their emotional attachment to the thing. They're telling me about their feelings. We all have really strong feelings about the stuff, and those feelings can be happy or angry or sad. Sometimes my clients are angry because the stuff that we're looking at reminds them of a divorce, or it reminds them of money that they think they wasted. So one client just today we were going through some old paperwork, and we went past the financial aid and student loans for her sons for college, and her first response was, my ex-husband never paid any of that. So the paperwork still had a goose to it for her. It still poked her because it reminded her of a way that she didn't feel supported by him. We all have our emotional attachments to the stuff, and sometimes angry is one of them. Sometimes it's sad. If it's something that reminds you of somebody who was important to you, somebody that's gone away. When I run across some of my mother's stuff, I have that, feeling well up around the item. And when you feel like that particular object in space is the only thing that keeps you connected to somebody who's no longer there, it makes it have a whole lot of emotion attached to that object, and it makes it hard to let go of some of that stuff. Sometimes it's super happy. One of the people on Facebook told me a story about this black dress that she's keeping that I'm sure she was in her 20s, and we were all younger and thinner then, right? But she can't let go of the black dress because it's the black dress that caught her husband's attention across the room at a party while he was there with another girl. And so that dress is like the va-va-va-boom dress that snagged her man. And so she feels like the dress should be enshrined. I thought, that's a keepsake dress, man. That's one worth keeping, right? That's something that she looks at that dress and she thinks, this is how come I've been married for 25 years, and it's super important to her. And so we attach with scotch tape and glue and hypo cement our emotions onto those objects, and sometimes it's really hard to peel our emotions off and let the object go away, right? The problem with our emotions being attached to things, it often prevents us from making really practical choices about what we need to keep versus what we need to let go of from all of those spaces in the house. all of those little places, the cabinets and the storage units, you have things shoved in. We have to go through and let some of that stuff go, and it makes it hard if they all have emotions attached to it. Sometimes the reasonable voice, which is saying, I'll never need this again, is drowned out by the panicked feeling of, what if I need this someday, right? One is a real emotional response, one is a real practical response, but we listen to the emotional one first. That's the one that's the louder voice always. You know how easy it is to tell your friend, you don't need that, let it go, right? That's because you can see it in a 100% practical way, because it's not your stuff, right? So you can look at it and see its potential resale value, what it would sell for at the garage sale, Craigslist, in the resale store. You can tell that it's still got usefulness or it doesn't. It might have some kind of value on a market, but you're seeing it through this filter that has no emotion attached to it at all. And the person that owns the object, of course, is seeing it completely through that emotional filter instead. So this is why people always say to me, you know, I can work on other people's stuff and it's super, super easy. But when I come to my stuff, I can't do it. Well, that's why, because you don't have emotional filters to anybody else's stuff, right? Makes it super easy. When it comes to your own things, you often need help listening to your practical voice and not your emotional voice, so that you can get the job done, so you can get the sorting happening. Hi, how you doing? One way to do that is to create algorithms, and we use this term very specifically, to help you process and sort. So you need edit parameters, rules by which you can make a choice, right? Ultimately, you want to be able to find things, and you don't want to own more than you can manage. That's the most important thing. You don't want to end up owning more than you can manage, and that stack gets taller as you go along, right? You accumulate, you accumulate, you accumulate, and one day you wake up and go, okay, now this stack is bigger than I have the energy to control. And so you always want to be trying to edit back down to your own strength level, energy level, time frame, willingness to work, right? The less you're willing to work, the less you need to own. That's the bottom line. And, you know, you want to be having fun more at the time than spending all your time doing chores, right? So shrinking that population is an ultimate goal so that you can manage it easier. So what do we mean by algorithm exactly? Creating an algorithm is our way of saying, give me a rule to follow so that I won't feel like, so that I'll feel like I'm safe, and I won't feel like I've made a mistake, and I'll feel like it's okay to let go of the stuff. You're creating an edit formula that's arbitrary by nature. Like, it's not a real rule out there. There's no, you know, official how to edit your stuff rules. You're making up a rule to follow. But you're creating this judgment call that is a very practical way of doing it. A very practical way of thinking through what stays and what goes. And I want to give you an example of Ed. Ed's the perfect example. We're going to talk about his books. So Ed is a bookworm, and he had a lot of books, and when he decided to downsize, how many years ago was that? 10, 11 years ago, right? He was emptying his house, and he was going to move into a shared space with a friend, and so he needed to go through his books, and I asked him how many books he thought he had. He said, oh, let's just say 3,000 books in, you know, 6 pieces of furniture in the house. So that's a typical collection for somebody that's into books, right? Like, if you like to read, you got a bunch of books. But there was no way he could take that many books into his new living environment. He needed to take 10% of it out. So he created these rules to get past his I love book feeling and make some choices. So let me read you what he said. For books that he'd already read, is it a keepsake book? Right? So he knew that if it was a keepsake to him, that it was important to him for memories. What's an example of a keepsake book he kept?
I have I have some children's books that were mine as a kid.
Right, so those felt special to you.
Yeah.
And so that was really a keepsake for him. And so he didn't want to give those away, so those got kept. Will I read this book over and over again? So these are books he's already read. Will he read it a second time, a third time? So if the answer was no, then those books went straight to the giveaway pile, right? He'd already read them, and he wasn't going to read them again. Off they went, right? And there were a couple that you said you read every year, or you turn back to them every so often or something, and so there were a few that went into the permanent keep pile because he's going to read them again, right? So for the unread books, he said, I thought this one was really brave, actually. He said, did I buy it in the last 3 months? So all of his book collecting life up to that point, he was only looking at the books that he bought in the last 3 months. So if he bought it more than 3 months ago, it went straight onto the giveaway pile. It was unread and it was older than 3 months since it came in the house. It went away, which was amazing to me. That would have been a lot of books, I'm thinking.
Well, it's really the other way around though. It was a keeper if I had bought it recently.
Okay.
Because then the last rule is, will I read it?
Will you read it the next 18 months?
The next 18 months.
Right, so if you bought it recently, it stays. But if you didn't anticipate reading it in the next 18 months, it went on the giveaway pile, right? So there was a very thin few little slices of books that came out based on his rules that he made. And then all the rest of them he was able to let go of. And he felt like he had been honored. You know, he was honoring the things that were important to him. And he was still divesting himself in a practical way of a whole bunch of stuff. He kept the keepsakes. He kept the stuff that he reads again. And, you know, the rest of it, he kept the recent purchases. And the rest of it went out the door. And that's a prime example of, he made those rules up out of his head. He didn't read them anywhere. He just sat there and thought, okay, so what kind of cutoffs can I devise for myself that won't give me a heart attack or make me panic, right? How can I thin this herd and still feel okay with what stays and what goes? So we're talking about taking that kind of approach to whatever kind of collection you have to filter through and give it a whirl. Make up a rule and see if you can live with the rule. Those rules are going to change over time. Maybe what you filter with today, you're going to filter it tighter or looser the next time, depending on what your interests are and what's going on with you as you age. Are you downsizing? Are you moving into a bigger space? What's happening with you? So you can change those rules over time as you filter. But the idea is pick a practical, arbitrary rule and apply that rule to the stuff. And the process of thinking in your head, does it meet the rule, yes or no, is a little bit more practical than, do I love it? Do I feel good about it? Can I, do I remember good things? Does it make me feel happy? Right? It's a more practical approach than focusing on your emotions about it. And if we stay focused on the emotions about it, you know what's going to happen, right? You stay focused on the emotions and it all stays, right? So we know that usually isn't a good solution. It's not a helpful one for you to move forward and divest, I guess. And you're going to take care of yourself. I mean, you're the person that's sorting, you're the person that's making the decision. So as you make those rules, please come in. You're always going to be the person that is making the choice. And so you're not likely to do harm to yourself, I guess is the best way to say it. You're going to take care of yourself. You're not going to let it go until you feel okay, which is why when I go and work with people, I ask the question, is it staying, is it going? And I never make the choice. It's not my stuff. And if they say no, I say okay. Because ultimately for me, it's not which things you keep, it's how much you keep, right? So my goal is just to get you to divest in terms of volume and space management, and you keep whatever's important to you. Because I never know which ones are super, super important, right? And you will always do that. And so because you're doing your own work, you'll know when you start to put it in the giveaway pile, if you have a panic attack, you probably need to take it back and think about the rules again, right? But the good things about setting rules around it as you go to create this algorithm to process, yes, is it this, yes, no, is it this, yes, no, and the no's go away. It forces you to think in a practical way, and it gives you a path to follow. And if the path makes you uncomfortable, you can change the path. But you're still going along and saying yes, no, yes, no, yes, no as you go down and letting things go. Does that make sense? I know this is an unusual concept. Ultimately, he made really extreme cuts, but he didn't feel bad about it at the end, right? Like you were comfortable. maybe you had a momentary, what do you think? What was it like when you gave up all that chunk of books?
I felt good about it, and it actually, kind of coincided with the advent of library ebooks.
Oh, true.
And so I sort of shifted a lot of my thinking about how I read, and so now, I have a whole new standard, which is first look for the library ebook, and if I'm desperate to read it soon and that there isn't one yet, then buy the ebook, and only as a last resort do I get the paper book.
And by then you really have to love it, want it bad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And by the same token, by the time you've gone through all those versions, 4 days has gone by, and maybe the enthusiasm has faded a little, right? And you still steer away from the paper book. So that's just an example for books, but it illustrates my point. So let's get practical and talk about some of the categories, collections we're talking about, and see if we can talk about what the algorithms would be for you guys. So sometimes the algorithm is set up based on space. For instance, this stuff has to fit in a specific container, like you have one bookcase and the books go on the bookcase, and when the bookcase is full, you can't add new unless you take something out, right? Sometimes people find that if they create a container and declare that the no-fly zone, like it can't fly out of the bookcase, right? And once that is full, you've reached capacity in the household, that's it. And then when you go to put another one and you're like wedging it in sideways on top and you're trying to, it's like, okay, it's time to filter. And my roommate does this really well. She has one bookcase in her bedroom, and when it's full, she's like, oh, I gotta get rid of some books. And she goes in and jerks some things out that she bought and hasn't read, or some that she kept the last round and now she's ready to let go of this round, because she likes to read and she's always gonna occasionally buy a new book and the bookcase fills up. But she creates that parameter for herself so it doesn't get overwhelming and it doesn't start stacking up on the floor and yada yada, right? Magazines, for instance, people say, here's the basket for the magazines that are going to read, euphemism, read. But here's the basket, and once that basket is full, you're done with the magazines. They can't spread, they can't go sit on other surfaces. It's time to take old ones and recycle old ones because you've got new ones coming in. Particularly for people that have subscriptions of things that they really like to read. If you aren't flipping them fast enough or reading them fast enough, A, we have to talk about the subscription, and B, that container that defines how many magazines you allow to stay in the house before you start recycling it's an algorithm. It has to fit in the box, right? If it starts to overflow the box, it's time for stuff to go. Clothes are a good example. Maybe you want to say that your parameter is all of the clothes have to fit on the clothing rod in your closet. Now, I hear women screaming right now because they have clothes in that closet, and they have clothes in the guest closet, and they have clothes in the closet downstairs, and they have shoes in and then in the garage, and the seasonal clothes are in boxes out in the garage or in the attic, and it's like, okay, I get it, but you have to ask yourself how many containers you want clothes in, and how many of those clothes really need to be living with you. So that's a whole other set of. I set it to the clothes closet. I've grown to 6 closets. Perhaps I'm overstating the obvious. Perhaps I'm keeping more than I really need, right? Okay, sometimes the algorithm is based on having a variety or on usefulness. So an example would be your cookware or the pantry. So one of the things that he suggested was, here's this oddball spice that I bought for this recipe that I was going to try. And it needed a pinch of la spice, and I'm not likely to use that anytime soon or again. So why leave it in the pantry? Let it go, and 4 years from now when you decide to make that dish again, you can go buy fresh spice in a small quantity, hopefully, right? It's one of the ways that you can filter. So everybody keeps salt and pepper, you keep the spices that you cook with all the time, but if you have a whole nother shelf of funky, weird spice land, all the things that you tried once and put it in the corner, maybe that's a way that you can get some space back. You filter out all the old stuff and go buy fresh when it pops up again. and like Renee's a big cook, right? So you have stuff that you use over and over and over again, right? And her little spice drawer has 3 shelves on it, and that's all the active spices that she cooks with. And then there's a few extra things that are in the pantry, but it's not a huge collection. So that fluffed slide out drawer with this, you know, it's like this long, basically, a foot times 3 of little racks of spicing. So it's not over jammed. We threw out old stuff, and it's now it's a working set of stuff she uses all the time. And it was everything that you cook, you can make with the stuff that's in there, right? I mean, you haven't been fooled yet. You haven't, right? So, that was a container. Like she was bound by her container, right? Like she had this much space built in next to the stove for the spices, and we could get rid of the stuff that was old and weird, and we're not going to use that anymore. And I know that she's a experimental cook. She likes to try new stuff, and so she may show up with another container someday of something. But in the meantime, there's space in the spice drawer, right? Sometimes about the cookware, there's a weird kitchen appliance, right? As you evaluate the cook pots, 80% of the time you use these 3 pans. And then you have 150 other pans that you've either tried or used once or inherited or whatever that are taking up a huge amount of space. So maybe you can go through the pans and say, do I use this all the time, yes or no? If the answer is no, am I likely to use it in the next 6 months? If the answer is no, then, I mean, how many times do you have to say no to yourself before you realize it's taking up valuable space for no good purpose in the kitchen, right? So setting some of those parameters will help you thin the herd of the kitchen.
There's also,
The kitchen guru weighs in.
Alton Brown
right?
always argues against the single-purpose appliance or device. He says if a tool only does one thing, you shouldn't have
It's
it
not
in your kitchen.
why bother?
Unless it's the only way to do that one thing.
Right.
I mean,
but generally,
generally,
if it does one thing,
a tool should be able to do a few things. Yeah.
right? So that because you can use it and wash it and use it again. If it's in the same recipe, you don't have to have a different thing every time. And there's a lot of people that make a lot of money marketing this new gadget that does this one thing. Like remember when the iced tea makers came out? Like, the pan with hot water, tea in a jar, the end. But you had to buy an appliance that plugged into the wall to make iced tea. Well, that came and went, but it was that year's hot ticket Christmas kitchen gadget, right? And I'm sure you can think of a million of them that have come and gone. It's their job to create something with a little buzz so that we all go buy one at Christmas. Resist the urge, that's what I'm saying. So, can you guess the algorithms for paper sorting? I'm sure you've all heard it before, right? There's a million of them, but keep the stuff that supports a number on your tax return. So the first question is this document part of a number that I reported on my tax return? Is it a deduction that I took? Is it income that I earned? If the answer is yes, it goes in the keep pile. If the answer is no, then you start filtering it out of the house. Save evidence of large purchases. Like here I bought the house, here's the documents where I bought the house, here's the documents where I bought the car, the computer, the fridge, the new 5-ton air conditioning unit that we added to the house later, right? The durable goods that you sunk a bunch of money in and you need those receipts for warranty work and whatever, those pass the test. Do I need to keep this? Yes, you do. Go put it in the keep pile. If it's not durable goods, all those credit card statements where you're buying groceries and going to Sam's and Target and gas and blah, 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 if you're not deducting any of that and you're not buying something that's permanent, it's not about to be returned, 30 days, 60 days, 15 days sometimes before you can return something and then you can't anymore. There's no reason to keep a record of all the times you went to Kroger unless you're going to put it on your tax return. So all those statements can go out pretty quickly. Give up expired insurance policies. We threw away 5 of them today. They were expired insurance policies for a house that she had sold. Well, that went out the door. Give up owner's manuals for things you don't own. You create an owner's manual file, right? You buy something, you go shove the manual in there, but no one ever takes anything out. And then when I make somebody go, oh no, we're gonna look through this file, and they're like, and then well, that went to Goodwill 2 years ago, and oh, that's gone, and my husband, that's sold, and I always cut it in half because they've never gone back and taken things out, right? Don't have to keep owner's manuals for stuff you don't own. And truthfully now, everybody publishes their owner's manuals online. If you go put your maker and product ID or name up in the computer, there will be the product manual right there online. You don't even have to keep the paper when they send you. The other ones that I always take out are, they publish it in like 17 languages. And unless you're reading the other 16, you can probably keep the English and let the rest go, right? That cuts the paper down by like 12, factor of 12. Okay, old utility bills, old credit card statements, old mortgage payments. That can all go, right? Give up the monthly investment statements if you have the annual one at the end of the year, right? You're going to get one for January and you're going to get one for every month, yada, 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 yada. And then you get to December and they go, woohoo, here's your annual report. And then all those 12 straight in the shredder, right? Those are some parameters about paper. And paper is a good thing to read about online, call me and ask, talk to your accountant, talk to your lawyer. You want to keep the divorce papers forever. I found that out the hard way because a client came back to me and said, oh no, I've been asked, I was divorced 25 years ago and I went to go buy a car, get a mortgage, something, and I had to produce my divorce papers to prove that I wasn't married to this guy anymore. And they needed the original document. So there are some things that you have to keep forever. But that is such a small fraction of all the paper in your house, let me just tell you. All you need to do is ask the people that if you're worried about it, ask somebody that you consider a professional, get some advice, and move on. And it'll be okay. And truthfully, 99 times out of 100, there's a disclaimer that you may be able to produce a piece of paper that I cannot get for you some other way. But most paper nowadays, you can go back and get it. And somebody said to me, do you want to save I was asking about the medical, they're going to deduct medical, so they have all their receipts for medical. And she's like, no, we go back to Walgreens, we go back to the doctor, they print us a receipt at the end of the year and they hand it to us. Like, awesome. That's super easy. You don't have to keep the receipts. You got something from the third party and that's enough for the IRS. So there's almost always a way to get the paper. It's not as scary as it used to be. If it's something legal, I would err on the side of keeping it. I bought a house and there's all those legal documents for the house. I sold a house and there's all those legal documents for the house. That kind of stuff. I got divorced. I got married. I adopted a child. You see what I'm saying? I got in a partnership. I dissolved a partnership. All that kind of legal mumbo jumbo. You probably want to keep a copy on hand. But all this sort of generic paperwork in your life, I think it'd be reasonable to filter it out. And you can ask for support about what exactly you feel comfortable letting go of. But there's always ways to make the paper thinner. Okay? A big problem for people is stuff considered as living with you because you inherited it or you find that it's a keepsake from your own life. So the stuff that's, this is from when I went to school, this is from my previous career, that kind of stuff. Or my parents died and I inherited this furniture, these photos, this china, this yada, 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 that kind of stuff. It's a category of stuff that we all have and have way too much of. The baby boomers are releasing their stuff into the universe. We are all barfing our stuff. And we're receiving our parent stuff and we're barfing our parent stuff simultaneously. So I think it's interesting that one of the characteristics in my mind, one of the characteristics of being a baby boomer is you are releasing, you're in a place where your kids are not going to inherit your stuff. They don't want your parent stuff. So you're the generation that's having to release all of your cumulative parents' things and your things out into the world, not in your family lineage. And it's a shift for people because they know very clearly that their parents saved all this stuff specifically to hand to you. And now you're turning around and having to go, la, here it goes, right? And it's a shock and a strain for people. I think it's difficult. And you can make some parameters around this to make it easier for yourself. So let me read. Is there a way I can use and enjoy it? So you have it in the house, you inherited from the mom. Is there a way you can use it and enjoy it? A lot of times people just take the pieces of furniture and they just sort of wedge them into the corner of the house somewhere. Wedge, crowbar, jam. And then they spend all their time sort of walking around the stuff, but they're not really enjoying it or using it. It's just part of the landscape. So ask yourself this question: can I really use this for something and enjoy using it, not force myself to use it? That's the difference. Sure, you could probably make up a reason to use it, but would you like it? So you wanted to be enjoying using it while it's there. Is there a theme that ties some of these things together so I can display it as a collection? So maybe you inherited everything from your dad's office and you think it's all precious because it's related to your dad and his work. But maybe you can pull some representative samples out and make a collage or a shadow box or hang a few things on the wall. I've seen people take random pieces from various china collections and decorate the wall and, make a wall art piece out of the inherited china. Or grandma's saved teacups, collected teacups were everywhere. Now, I don't know about you, but I probably don't want 80 teacups on my wall. And they did create little display units to hang teacups. There was a time when everybody had teacups and they hung them all on the wall. But if that's not your thing, maybe you can collect the 5 of them that you think are really cool looking and you can display those, and the other 75 can go out into the universe, right? You're still honoring grandma's tea collection, but you're not living with all 80 of them just because grandma collected them. Because it was her passion and not yours, I'm guessing, right? Ask yourself if there's a way to preserve the memories while reducing the bulk. So one of the things that I do with photos is you go through and look at photos and say, is there a person here that I know who it is? Do I recognize this face? Can I put a name to the face? Maybe you go through and here's the big pack of photos when the family went to Disneyland. You have 500 photos from Disneyland. So you probably don't need 500. You can probably go through that 500 and pick out 10 that are really great shots of the family, or somebody smiling or laughing, or they're having a great time, or oh look, there's the baby with Mickey Mouse, or whatever. And you can create a representative sample of that vacation and keep 10% of the photos and let the rest go. Like they took a whole bunch of pictures of the electric night parade at Disney, right? But no family members are in the photos, and it's just some, random moving characters in the train going by, right? So maybe those can go away, and you can keep the ones that show you your family having a good time, everybody together and having fun, right? Any kind of memorabilia can be filtered like that, where you pluck, here's the whole spread, and you pluck the representative sample out and set the parameters to say, what's the 10% of this pile that makes me the most happy, that has the coolest pictures, and you let the less cool pictures go away to be recycled. Does that make sense? Keep one box of school keepsakes for each kid. Not a closet. I have been in homes where here was the school. You open the hall closet and it's top to bottom boxes of little kid stuff from school. And if you take that whole closet and you ship it to the kid, that kid is going to have a fit about receiving 27 boxes of old school papers. Mom, what the hell were you thinking? Right? I always have to coach moms about this. So that's a good one to filter down to the one box of super cool examples. You don't need every finger paint that they ever did. You need a really great one, and you can let the rest go. It's, it's hard for moms sometimes, but you can do it. I swear you can. One thing that the last thing I'm going to say about the keepsake category is we go through and we create those keepsake boxes in the moment. Oh, here's the ticket to the concert. Here's the flowers from here's the, right? And you sort of shove things in keepsake without thinking. But if you ever go back to that box again, or those boxes plural, you may find that some of the things you put in the keepsake box are really not important to you anymore. Like you don't really remember the guy that you were dating when you got the flowers. That can probably go. Or you don't really remember that concert. Or there's things that seem super important in the moment. And after they've marinated for a while and aged out, you're able to let them go. So you can go back into that keepsake pile and thin it out over time because it loses some of its juice after a while. And it's a way to make it thinner. Ultimately, you don't want your whole house full of keepsakes. That's the history of your life, not the current living. And it's more important for you to have the space to live and to be happy and move around and have people over and take care of yourself easily and manage your space and not have it all be drowning in extra stuff. So we want to aim for you can live well, right? And setting those parameters around the collection to help you thin them will make it easier for you to do that. For all those things to which you feel emotionally attached, remember the goal is to release the clutter from your care and let it return to a neutral state so that someone else can collect it anew. I don't think we think about that. I think when we feel super attached to it, we feel like we're holding on to it. And when we give it away, all of our warm emotional feelings are going to go off to Goodwill with it. And the person that gets it is going to have that same feeling. But the truth is, that stuff stays with you, and the practical object is the part that goes away. So someone on the other end is just going to look at it as a practical thing and hopefully find use out of it and not have it be stored in your house, I guess is the bottom line. Okay, set it down to set it free to flow down the river of stuff. That's your goal. Okay, so we have about 15 minutes, so does anybody have any questions for me today? Who's got stuff they're trying to process? Think about it, think about it. Yes, ma'am.
You know, one time you said something about the Trail of Tears, gave me the step along. But I find that if I give it to my children, if there's something I absolutely regret, I can pull it back. And that seems to work for me because I'm moving stuff down the line towards the goal.
So are you saying that everything that leaves your house goes to your kid's house?
Not, well, I mean, there's piles that go to my daughters who, you know, my daughter who does not live with me.
Okay.
And, you know, unfortunately, she will give them away, so I have no say-so in that. But if I give it to the daughter that I live with, then I can pull it back.
So I hesitate to point out to you that giving it to the daughter that lives with you is not actually letting it leave the house. So it hasn't changed the current volume in the house when you do it that way. Yeah, that would.
But it gives me a chance to try it on if I really want to get rid of this item.
Okay, so if you think about it as a temporary parking space, like you're going to go store it in the garage on its way out the house.
Yes.
Okay, I can see that. Do you ever actually let it go from her out the house?
Oh yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, so then if it lets it marinate for you, if it lets it sort of lose some of its importance by going to her first, that's no different than putting it in the garage and letting it sit there for 6 months before you decide to let it go.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Or
with you.
Also clothes.
As long as you let it go.
And she'll use the clothes. So I mean, once I give them to her, I mean it's her clothes, and rarely I'll pull it back.
That's good.
Yeah.
And if you're okay with when she gives it away, it's gone.
Well, my older daughter, I have no choice. It's gone.
Right.
It's gone.
She needs it. That's what she said.
Well, and you know, if it goes to the daughter that lives with you, it is a step down, and it's sort of giving you, you're letting it go away in stages.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yes.
As long as you ultimately let it go away.
Yes.
All right. And you know, give more to the daughter that lets it go quickly.
Yeah.
Because I'm guessing that you have plenty, and if you don't need to retract very much.
No, I don't need to retract. And yeah, but she has her pushback, like, you know, Don't bring me any more stuff.
She's done, right? Yeah, so, yeah. All right, well then, you might want to think of a secondary place that you, if it's not the two daughters, then stuff that you really are sure, because I imagine it isn't all stuff that you think you might want to have back. There's some things that you know for sure you don't want back.
Yeah.
And those you can let go straight to Goodwill, for instance.
Yeah, also I've been putting things in the car and when homeless or on the side of the road, here, take it, you know.
Hey, whatever works. If it gets it out the door, awesome.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Who else? Who's thinking about their stuff? You've had an interesting face, look on your face all night long.
I'm just thinking of all the things I need to get rid of.
So what's on the list?
Lots of papers, but I need to go through like each one. Clothes.
Paper is something that you do have to, you have to touch it to make sure.
Exactly.
But if you've done any sort of filtering, like here's the file folder where I put all the mortgage payments, for instance. You can pull out that whole hunk and fan it to make sure there's nothing else stuck in there by accident. Occasionally I will find something else in there.
Right.
And then you can put it in the shred pile. And if you panic and you realize that something accidentally got shredded, 9 times out of 10 you can recreate. It won't be lost forever. You know, I mean, think about the pattern of the same company sends you a bill and it looks exactly the same, and you write a check and you save it, it all looks the same. And so when you fan through that pattern, the thing that isn't that pattern sticks out like a sore thumb. You can see it immediately. And so you can sort of fan through without actually reading every document. You can fan through when you think it's a chunk of the same thing. You know, if it's a more jumbled pile where you're not sure that there was any thought to the making of the
I have a
pile,
lot of those.
then then you want to be able. So then I would sort in stages. Like I would take the pile and sort it out in a few stages and say, this is about finances and this is not. This is junk mail and this, get some big ones and get rid of the easy stuff first.
Yeah.
And then go back to the stuff that you have to think about and do those one at a time. But usually piles have a lot of, I know instantly that's crap and it can go real quickly.
And I have friends who say, oh, well, throw everything away and scan what you need, But that's work too, to scan and...
It is work to scan it, and some people prefer to have the digital record versus the paper record. I think that's a personal preference thing. Whether you want to be able to flag the piece of paper or you want to go look at a computer pile, whichever one makes you happy. The truth is, scanning and filing on the computer is the same thought process and task as taking the piece of paper and putting it in a file and putting it in a file drawer. Like you're doing the same thing digitally that you're doing in real time. It's just a personal preference which way you like to do the work.
Just don't have the...
So some people think it's more fun to run the little electronic gear and send the thing through the paper and have it spit out and oh look, and they go and categorize and plug along and they're, awesome. To me, that's a lot of, it's not my favorite way to do it. I'm happy because I don't have any problem thinning the paper down, like that's not my problem. So I can thin the paper down and I spend my time with the paper I need to keep and do it in, I have a little file cabinet. But that's because that's my personal preference. So either way, you're going to spend time. It's just which ones you'd rather do, right? Okay, who else? Anybody? Thinking, what about you?
I've worked retail part-time since I moved to Houston.
Okay.
I've been the same size basically since I graduated college.
Which means you have a whole lot of clothes. That's what you're telling me. I can tell right now. You've been the same size since high school. You've been working in retail. You have access to clothes. You have discounts for clothes, which means you're drowning in clothes.
Correct.
Okay. So how do you feel about filtering it?
Well, actually, I started. At one point, I got laid off at one point a few years ago. So I gave away 13 bags of clothes and 6 bags of shoes.
Woohoo!
Now, since the hurricane has come along, there are a lot of people that can use my clothes that I have not even seen in years. Like I'm going through things that I really don't remember I even bought. I'm finding things that still have the tags on them. And I know that there are a lot of other people that can benefit. The thing is that like reading the statement on your Meetup invitation, it's overwhelming.
Yes.
start.
Yes.
When you feel like you're drowning in clothes.
It's overwhelming
And
too.
And other stuff.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that the thing that people do is they look at the whole chore and think, oh my God, that's so big. I can't, and then your brain sort of goes, "Meh, meh, 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 meh," and shuts down, right? I look at the whole pile, and to me, it's a big project, and I start chunking it in my head, and we're going to do this and that and that and that and that, right? So for me, it's not overwhelming, and because I do it all day long, every day, right? That's what I do. But when it's your chore, and you're looking at it, and you're thinking, oh my God, that's 60 hours of work, and then you turn your brain off, and you can't take it. The better way to look at it is not how long is it going to take me to do this whole project, but how much time am I willing to work on the project this week? So you don't want to look for the end of the end result. You want to look at, I'm willing to do this chore for 2 hours this week, and at the end of the 2 hours I'm going to bag up what I've done, and I'm going to take it away, and I'm going to do the happy dance. Right? Because you did 2 hours this week, and that's excellent. So assume that it's going to take you a while, and there is no weekend that's going to appear where you do all of it in one sitting. Like, none of you guys are going to take your project and sit down and start and work until it's done. Like, that is not happening, right? So you just want to decide how much you're willing to work this week and work it, and then give yourself kudos and go have a pizza because you did a good job. And if you take a couple of bags once a week, one day you'll wake up and go, hey, as long as you're not bringing in 2 bags at the same time you're taking out 2 bags, you're good. And it will shrink, and eventually you'll wake up and go, oh my God, I'm at the back of the closet, it's all done. But you don't want to focus on how big the project is and how many hours, because you're never going to do it consecutively. So you don't want to think about how many consecutive hours it would take, because it doesn't matter. You're not going to do it that way. Just focus on what you're willing to do this week. And then give yourself the win, right? Like, don't be looking at what didn't get done. Stand there and look at the 2 bags that you're taking to the donation place and be thrilled. That is 2 full bags of stuff that is not staying in your closet. And that's good, right?
I have like boxes lined up in my garage. Get rid of.
Okay,
I'm just still going through closets
okay,
and shoes.
right?
And whenever I have the energy, I'll use that term, to actually get up and do it, then I find more stuff, I put them in the boxes. So there are a whole lot of boxes ready to go. It's just,
Are the boxes heavy or big?
yeah, they're big boxes.
Okay, so those are hard to get in the car,
Right.
right? Which makes it more of a chore. So you probably want to, if the boxes are stuff that's ready to go, get the win of making some things leave the house, right? Go to the boxes, bag up the stuff that's in the box, put it in the car, drive away with it. And then you have an empty box, and that's, whoosh, right? You don't want to collect everything somewhere until you're completely through with the project, because then you'll have to rent a moving truck and moving guys to get it all to the donation place, right? You want to get things ready to go and get it in a manageable pile, and then take that away and then start another pile.
Plus the donation places you donate would rather get it 2 bags at a time than 12 bags at a time.
Then 14 boxes on a
Because they're
truck.
relying on volunteers to sort and.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah, I split them up between different organizations, and I
Yeah,
usually
that's
prefer
great.
the ones that don't sell them to make a profit off of them, but it's just.
Yeah, whatever, wherever you want to go is fine. But the ultimate goal here is to let it go out and not have it be a big chore. You don't want to spend 5 hours loading your car and unloading your car, right? So anything that you can do that takes a small clump and drives it away, get something out of your hair. You'll be surprised how good it feels just to take this, here's the corner and now I can see the floor. Like, that's a huge relief, and it's a fraction of your project. But when you uncover a little place, it's a big relief. It's a big win. And it gives you a little energy to keep going another day, is what I'm saying. Like when you go there and you're just like, oh, I got rid of some stuff, and then you feel like you accomplished something and you're ready to go back to it next week. Does that make sense? Okay. Anybody else have questions today? No, I've been so great. Thank you so much for coming and listening to me talk in January. Yay, see you later.